Well, hey guys, welcome back to the Master Series. I have been waiting for this Master Series for 6 months, obviously because it's June, but mostly because this is a topic that I absolutely love with two people that I have admired pretty much since I started in real estate. But also because these two folks are doing something that I don't think you see everywhere you go. And that's obviously stuff that we focus on in the Master Series in the monthly coaching club. But they've really doubled down on their strategy and they're doing some innovative stuff. And more importantly, it's working. So I want to introduce you guys to Marguerite Martin and Alyssa Christensen. I'm going to let them go ahead and kind of introduce themselves and to tell us a little bit about yourselves, guys.
Okay, I'm Marguerite, and I've been a realtor for almost 14 years. I survived the downturn and am enjoying the glory days. I started off very traditional in a brokerage that, Zillow was around, but they hadn't even monetized it for realtors yet. There weren't profiles or anything like that. So it was a different time where we were all still open house, phone, calling expireds, which I know people still do, but that was pretty much our only option, sending postcards. And things have changed a lot in the time that I've been in real estate, and I have experimented with and changed with the times. So I've tried everything, basically.
Very exciting.
My name's Alyssa Christensen, and I'm the owner, managing editor of Homescribe Creative, which is all of the real estate work that I do with people. But then I also have my own community website called Dear English Major, which is non-real estate related. It's for English majors. And it utilizes a lot of the community marketing strategies that we talk about. So
Very cool. So you guys may be wondering now that you've met both Marguerite and Alyssa, like, okay, it makes sense that Marguerite's on the show, but what is this Alyssa girl doing here? And I can appreciate where you guys are coming from, but I think that it's important because what these two ladies have built is something that's really interesting to me. And Alyssa has been a big part of building that in Marguerite's business as well. Not to mention they've built their own business together now as well, which we'll talk about in a moment. But we've had Katie Clancy on the show, you guys, and we've talked a lot about how you can be present in your community and you can use yourself as a human being to make an impact in your community. But what you guys do that I think is even better, one step better, is you then leverage that to grow your business, which I think online and a little bit offline as well through kind of a variety of mediums. When I first met you, it was, I think, exclusively kind of blogging and a little bit of video, but it's evolved over time. So talk to me about like, when did that moment sort of click of like, there's something more here. I don't have to do this calling of expireds. Like there's a strategy behind this.
Well, honestly, for me, like there was not an exact moment. I was just never any good at calling expired. To be fully disclosing, I don't even answer my phone. So, and I know that in the real estate industry, like that's a really big deal. Like you always answer your phone. I don't. And so like for me, figuring out, I think at the core of our strategy, the thing that you have to know to begin with is, first of all, that you deserve to work with clients who like you and trust you. And in order, we call those your ideal clients. Yeah. Like, I don't think we're alone in that. Like, so we have a whole process for figuring out like, who is your ideal client? If you could just like wave a magic wand and replicate 3 or 4 clients over and over and over again, who would they be? Because ultimately, we all know any strategy, any speaker you see, like if you implement any strategy consistently, it's probably going to work. And my experience early in my career was implementing a strategy, a personal marketing strategy, which involved brochures, postcards, and some blogging. It was the olden days, like 2008, 2009, but there was blogging. And the problem was the people I was attracting were not ideal clients. And so I was successful and like people wanted to know how I was doing it. But ultimately it was miserable because, if you don't, we all know like real estate is hard enough. If people don't like you and trust you and go along with your advice, it's hell. Yeah. And it's much easier to do 25 or 30 deals a year with people who love you than it is to do even 12 deals a year with shitty clients. So that's kind of the core philosophy at the heart of all of this. Because in our course, we talk about all different kinds of, I guess you could call them like strategies or tactics, right? blogging, video, Instagram, they all work, right? It's all about working by attraction. But before you can work by attraction, you got to know clearly who you're trying to attract and what attracts them.
Yeah. So like our course is called Mastering the Art of Community Marketing. And we take it from like the very first steps. And one of those is like figuring out your ideal client. So like we have a workbook that goes with it too. And it's called like How to Attract Your Ideal Client. But first you have to figure out who your ideal client is. And so like we help people like narrow in on that and actually like figure out who that is. Because most people like, I feel like don't actually know who that is, even if they've been like in real estate for a few years,
decades.
you know? Yeah.
And like even those of us that kind of think that we do, I think the way that you guys go about it, you sort of uncover other things,
right? And just
which is important.
You don't mean like I specialize in sellers, right? Like, I specialize in buyers and sellers in 2 counties around my brokerage, and it's like no, like
it's like pretty hyper focused.
Yeah, like I specialize in singles and childless couples in downtown Tacoma and the immediate surrounding areas, preferably gays. Like,
right.
You know, like that is my like community of people that I'm targeting. And one of the things I say is like, if you're at an open house, like we've all had that experience of sort of like locking eyes with a client who's with another agent. And you're both kind of like, we should be together and you're with someone terrible. And it's your fault because you didn't put the information out into the world so that those people could choose you. People can't choose us if they don't know who we are and why we're perfect for them. And that's it's so scary for agents to say like, this is what I do best. But if we don't do it, we don't get the people who need us the most.
Yeah. So what you guys talk about though, that I find particularly fascinating is it almost goes against everything we've been taught. It doesn't almost, it does go against everything we've been taught, which I kind of love. And the more you guys get to know Marguerite, the more that will make sense. But so it seemed like a natural strategy when I saw you start to kind of unfold this strategy. But I think it's important to mention because some of us start thinking about like this ultra niche market of like singles, downtown living, preferably gays, and like a lot of what you just said, if you're marketing using those terms, is a fair housing violation. But it's not, you guys aren't doing anything that's against fair housing. You're just acknowledging to yourself and creating content that would appeal to those people. And so I just want to kind of put out a disclaimer to you, to all of our monthly coaching club members, that it's important to understand that fair housing is about excluding groups and saying you can't read this or this couldn't be for you. And you guys aren't doing that. You're putting the content out there. You're just saying, we know this would probably appeal to, you know, a single millennial downtown that may or may not be homosexual.
Well, the other beautiful thing about articulating, you know, you don't even have to articulate the niche, but just like creating certain types of content that's going to appeal to certain people. I get people with kids that reach out to me all the time that want to live in the suburbs, but they like me. They like the things I write. They like the style that I write in. And those people end up working out just fine, you know, but it's like, you know, I think people are very smart. We do it when we look for service professionals, you know, the way that we go through and vet, the way that we choose the people that we want to work with. You want to click with them. So the more that people put out there, whether it's videos or blog posts, or I don't want to overwhelm people because there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. Plus the content of your personal Facebook statuses, like you're filtering, you're teaching people who you are and what you're about, and you're drawing people to you. And most importantly, you are repelling people. And repelling people is as important as attracting them.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Go ahead, Alyssa.
I was just going to say, like, I think that, like, you know, when Marguerite says this, like, super focused, like, group of people, I feel myself, like, when I think of my own business, like, you know, shutting down. I'm like, oh, like, I can't do that, though. Like, that's great. That's what you're supposed to do, but, like, not really. But, like, yeah, Marguerite says, like, everyone else still comes to you. Like, people who are, like, on the opposite spectrum or whatever, like, they still come. That is, like, what it makes the content unique, and, like, it's not so general. And so
yeah, so let me ask you guys, is it a natural feeling, those attendees that are watching with us, is it a natural feeling to be a little scared to start with this strategy? Because you're right, repelling, you need to repel as much as you attract, but if you're a newer agent getting started in the business, the idea of repelling is a little bit scary. So, I mean, what would you say to the agent that's saying, I'm nervous about repelling people, in part because, and I think that we get nervous about repelling people in part because, and you guys answer this for me, because we aren't sure who we need to attract. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, and the truth is, and this is the hardest part, if you are like some agents, like their prospecting style is going to be to create content and work by attraction, right? We're never door knocking. It's just not our gift in life. I'm speaking for myself and for us. The first 2 years in real estate, it's freaking hard. You need to survive however you can. You need to do whatever you can. You need to take whatever deal you can, because for the first 2 years, until you've worked with some people, until you've closed some deals, you're not going to be able to articulate your niche. You just can't, because you don't know. I started off working with investors, doing raw land deals. Like it's working site at like suburban developments. Like I started out in the suburbs. That's where I began. And like I evolved into my niche through experience by working with people for whom for me, where the transaction was so much work and so awful. And then realizing like, oh, when I do it this way, it's light and effortless. So what the whole idea is, you're creating a full pipeline of good people. So that way, when you get someone who hits you up and you're like, oh my gosh, like that is a whole kind of crazy that I don't want to deal with. By the way, that is the perfect client for someone else in your office. You just refer it along, take your 25, 30%, whatever you charge, and then you move on with your life. And you don't feel any doubt, because first of all, that creates a revenue stream for you that you don't have to work for, which is beautiful. And we can talk about that later if you want to.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then the other part of that is, that every time you say no to someone that's going to sap your energy and suck out your life force, and every practicing realtor listening knows exactly what I'm talking about, you're creating the space to do a better job for your ideal clients, who will refer you more of your ideal clients, because we all know that great clients refer us other great clients, and those pain in the ass people that we kill ourselves for, that don't appreciate us at the end of the deal, if they do refer us, they refer us more pain in the ass people. It's a divine law of real estate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So go ahead.
Like in our course, we have a whole section about.
No, go ahead.
We have a whole section that's about fears and concerns in kind of a different way, because like people are, not only that is like creates fear, but then there's like, okay, so once you do like identify those people, then like putting out content, people are, what if I'm gonna say something that's gonna like offend someone, or people like aren't gonna like me, or then what do I do? Like, and like that's all part of it. Like
this is a very personal style of prospecting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Listening to this and just going like, whoa, I've got my Boomtown site and it works real good, and I don't care if my clients are nice. Like, God bless you, like stay with it. But if you're practicing real estate and you're struggling with if you're in like a person who's at all emotionally spongy, right? If you are in a relationship with your clients, some of us are, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. This is a strategy for having a full pipeline, more than a full pipeline, like so much way of people who are a pleasure to be around for you. And that's subversive. Like you say, it's not something we're really taught. Our brokers certainly don't want us to believe that for their own reasons.
Absolutely.
But like it's a core belief that there is a client for every agent and an agent for every client. Jerks should be working with jerk agents. Sweet, nice people like Alyssa should be working with awesome, sweet, nice realtors like me.
Absolutely. No, so you bring up a really good point because we have quite a few members that are newer agents, or kind of just transitioning into and really like defining their brand, defining their business. So I've always been a big believer that it's easier to do things along the way than to sit there in 2 years and be like, okay, now who's my niche client? So what do you recommend to somebody who's thinking, this sounds appealing. You're right. I have no idea who I want to attract. Of course, I want to attract nice people, but like nice people, again, is a little too broad to like just give content that nice people like. I mean, like assholes like the same content as nice people sometimes. And so
I work with people who, Alyssa probably would consider like total assholes. She would never work with some of the people that I work with that I just really I'm delighted in that. And then there are other people who are perfectly kind individuals, but just stuff that they say, it makes me really, it touches against my stuff. I had one client that just activated all my family stuff.
Yeah.
You know, what you can do about that except know that like that's not your person. So what I would say is, I think what I'm supposed to say is like, buy the course. But hey, guess what? We did a free webinar with the ideal client exercise, and we can email it to you if you want a link to like the
Awesome.
I mean, it was
Don't worry, we do have a link to so that they can buy your course too. So we will shamelessly plug you so you don't have to. Don't worry.
It's really not that. The course is closed right now. Like we're not selling it right now. So like, but we did do the ideal client exercise out there. So like, I think that is like really foundational. So if somebody's feeling confused or worried about that, it's not imposed on you. You
Right.
get to who your ideal client is. I mean, maybe you're what my niece, who just started in real estate 3 years ago. It turns out, is working with a lot of lawyers. You know, and this is someone who ostensibly should be a lot like me, like kind of was made in my image a little bit.
Yeah.
She loves clients that I do not like to work with. And
that works out well for both of you then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like just totally different. And I think that's the thing that people need to understand. And I think she was one of those agents, like what we were talking about when she was new. She came in saying, all right, I'm going to create my logo. I'm going to create my website. I'm going to create my brand. I'm going to blog from day one. And she ran into a massive problem in that she needed to learn to transact. She needed to learn how to close a deal. You know, she needed to get confident in her contracts. Because a lot of us that are also like very sort of engaged and touchy-feely with our clients are also really not able to do a good job in real estate until we're really confident in our abilities. And we all know that even with the best training program your brokerage might have, until you are in the trenches, you don't get confident. You don't learn how to have an answer to every question, even if that answer is, let me go find out. That's a weird thing. Like the discernment to know it's a weird thing and not just, I don't know anything. So it took her about 2 years to finally go, oh, yeah, this is my niche. I need to rework everything. So I think it's such frustrating advice for new people to say like, yeah, go ahead and start a blog, but blog about your real estate journey itself. You know, your original content is just showing people like, did you know that like real estate agents every Tuesday like have secret open houses that are just for other realtors and like serve each other like really nice food and sometimes wine, and like, did you know this is a thing that's happening right under your noses, people? Like that was so fascinating to me when I got licensed in real estate. And I tell people, like, tell people about what it's really like. Everybody thinks it's HGTV. Dispel the myths. Tell them what's going on. Build trust with people as you are having your own process, and then start figuring out, okay, so now I want to talk about multifamily because it looks like I want to work with investors more than anybody. I'm going to start telling people what they need to know before they know it. And then the other objection that people sometimes have to that is, okay, well, I have all this specialized knowledge now. I don't want to blog about it. I don't want to make videos about it because this is the thing that I know best. And I want them to come to me. And what they don't realize is when you give out that knowledge, especially if it's counterintuitive to what they might be seeing or hearing on TV or from other realtors, because other realtors give all kinds of bad advice out of habit. If you're saying something that's a little bit different, people are going to engage with it and then trust you. And one of the things I talk about is like in advance, before they ever talk to me, through blogging and video, sort of molding them in your philosophy of real estate in advance. So by the time you reach out and you have that initial seller or buyer conversation, they're fully on board. They're like, yeah, I know I need to get rid of a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I know I need to stage my house. Like, who should I hire? You know, I know that I need to get pre-approved before we go look at any houses. Like I know I'm going to need professional photography. So I know that's going to cost more for your commission. Like I get it because you've already discussed all of it before they ever.
That's good. So you bring up an interesting point about your cousin or your niece, I'm sorry, which I love this point, and it's going to go a little bit off topic, but I would be remiss if I were not to have you talk about this on the show. But I think a lot of the time, once we figure out who our ideal client is, and we know who we want to attract and who we want to repel, we kind of get in our minds that like the people we want to repel are people that we don't ever even want to be around, or that like whoever they choose to work with them, like there's no way I could get along with that person. And I think the point that you raised, which I always find so interesting, is there's people that I would never want to work with, that I really like them as humans. I just don't want to work with them. Yeah. And I really like the agent that they may choose, but like that agent would want to work with them. So talk a little bit about that, of like, we can't kind of get too caught up in our heads of like what it might look like, because as you say, like we don't really know, right?
Yeah, and I think even my philosophy on repelling people has evolved as I've moved more into matchmaking, and now I want those referrals. Like I'm trying to get people dependent on me for everything. I want you to come to my blog to find out where to get the best Bloody Mary. I want you to hit me up when you need a roofer. And like, I have like templated responses via text and via email to a million frequently asked questions that have nothing to do with real estate, because I want them to be in the habit of coming to me always. So when they come to me because their cousin wants to buy a commercial building for their bakery, that is not my ideal client. I've never done a commercial deal in my life. And I'll be like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Tell me more. And if I was buying a commercial building right now, I would be talking to Brent. Do you want me to connect the two of you? Do you want me to just give you his number? You know, what do you want me to do? And they'll be like, oh yeah, give me his number, or oh yeah, have him call me. And everybody knows now in my agent community that I do a lot of referring. And I ask people to tell me all the time, like, what are you doing best? What are the deals you're doing most of? What do you like the best? Who is your ideal client? And it's so frustrating sometimes because agents often can't articulate that. And so I have to dig it or pay attention or go into the MLS and search closed transaction in a particular geographic area and price range and figure out who is closing raw land in that area now, like who is actually doing the work, and then reach out to them, because people just won't say sometimes, or they don't really know.
Yeah, that's a good point too, of like that strategy of kind of some of the questions that you're probably getting aren't things that you just naturally know. So I think some of us are reluctant to roll out a strategy like this because we're like, well, I don't really know all of, like, I got kids. I don't go get Bloody Marys on a Sunday. How could I figure that out? Like, we can find this information, or we can find like the commercial real estate agent that we would use. And so is that something that you recommend to people, of like, if you just don't inherently know some of this, like, do the research so that you can be that resource? Or do you think like stick to what you know and leave the rest alone?
You know, what I would say is back to like the kids, the Bloody Mary thing. So for me, the equivalent is probably like, I have had a post literally since I launched the website.
I mean, in like full disclosure, I have kids and I had a Bloody Mary yesterday. So yeah, it doesn't mean that you can't.
But like, I've had a draft post on my websites for 3.5 years about private school tuition in Tacoma that I have kind of gone back to and been like, I should really publish this. I've worked on it quite a few times, but I don't, it's very hard to write it. It's very hard to research it. It's not my area. It's, you know, I could probably pay Alyssa to finish it, but now I'm stubborn about it. She probably doesn't even know what's in there. It's really old. But you know, I'm not telling people, if you are, you know, not a drinker and you don't go to brunch, to start blogging about brunch all the time. You don't have to. But what I've found, having a blog and having a podcast, is by doing the research around topics that are interesting to me, I become like a better community member and more of a resource. People depend on me more. And they don't just depend on my blog. Like, I get invited to meetings that I never used to get invited to. I get invited to speak at events community events that I never used to have access to. And that's the whole thing, is follow your curiosity about your community. That's the whole thing. And I think the biggest revolution that's happening right now, and it seems kind of new, is this idea of, to attract great real estate clients, stop talking about real estate. And I mean, I don't mean stop talking about it entirely. People need to know what you do. They need to trust that you're competent and see that you know your stuff. But you need to be creating stuff about, people don't know that if we talk about, you know, what's going on with the neighborhood rezone, like, they don't think like, oh, she's not talking about real estate. That's talking about real estate. Like, we don't need another blog post about interest rates. Like, they're going to Fortune magazine for that crap now. You know, they're going to Zillow for it. Zillow's earned the right, you know, through a lot of great content, to talk about things that we don't really need to compete with them about. But you can take it local to your neighborhood if you really need to talk about real estate stuff. But ultimately, like, be the most in the know person about what buildings going up, what restaurants are opening. I think the highest traffic posts we've had this year are like, what restaurants are opening. People just really want to know. Yeah.
So that's really good advice. So let's kind of shift gears a little bit, because I want to definitely address Alyssa and how the two of you guys got involved with one another. But so an agent that wants to roll this out, and I'm not going to say anything about the members. I'm sure all of you guys would overly invest in your business to grow it the way that you should. But it's a common misconception that, like, because we watch these panels and read these articles of like the agent that's doing it all, and like they're operating their drone while they're blogging with the other hand, and like they're doing it all. And my feeling is like, if you're doing it all, you're not doing any of it well. And so what you did, Marguerite, and with Alyssa's help, is I feel like you really doubled down on this strategy by investing in it and saying, I want this to work. I'm not a professional writer. I don't know that the content I would personally put out is going to be the best content for them. So talk a little bit about kind of how you got to that point and how it's evolved over time. And maybe if you guys could break down, like, if there's a way to do it on a budget as they get started, and then a way to do it right, if you will, or with a higher investment as they get going.
So I can say that for starting in 2008, I had a blog called Get Real Tacoma. It's still out there. I don't really update it anymore. You can see it. It's a very old template. But I blogged on that site for years, probably 4 or 5 years, by myself, content that was interesting to me. And I had to read tons of books about writing because I didn't go to college, and I was like, my writing is probably really bad. By the way, I go back and look at it, I'm like, my writing was just fine. Like, my content was just fine. And it was exhausting. Like, I would work all day as a realtor and come home at night and blog. And that was something that in the beginning, I also thought like I had to write a lot more than I think I really did. But those posts are nice and old and have lots of really good Google juice now. So like, I'm very glad that I went through that time. Then when I started Move to Tacoma, you know, I initially, it's movetotacoma.com, and that's more of a community neighborhood focused site. And I tried to do what I did with the first site, which is build it myself in WordPress. And I really quickly realized that if it was going to have the features I wanted, you know, a clickable neighborhood map, a full screen video homepage, I could Google into the wee hours of the morning, and I was never going to figure out how to build that myself. So I had to hire a web guy.
Right.
And started, okay, created my little content plan, and this is what I'm going to write these neighborhood pages. I'm going to do these things. And by then I was actually like doing okay in real estate. So like, I was busy enough that this was getting really hard to do. And that's when I hired Alyssa. I think the first year of content for Move to Tacoma, I did it myself.
Yeah.
And so not much got done. I was podcasting, which was cool and new, and getting some different audience and traffic to the site, but the blogging was super inconsistent. And when I finally said, okay, I'm going to pay X amount a month to Alyssa, and she's going to write 4 blog posts, and then put those 4 blog posts and combine them with the podcast into a newsletter that goes out once a month, like the consistency of that, and posting it to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and creating like a cute little picture in Instagram, like all the stuff I wasn't doing because I do not have time. And also I've learned to accept that I'm not a very good systematic implementer. Like, I'm very creative. I have lots of great ideas. I like to make things, but I don't like to push them out and do all of the stuff that you really have to do. If you're going to create great content, it has to get seen it has to be pushed out in a systematized way. Yeah. So hiring Alyssa was a big turning point, and it was so scary because it was like committing to a monthly expense. And now it's like addictive. I don't write my podcast show notes. I don't post my podcast. In the beginning, I worked with my friend Ann Jones, and we made videos together, and we had like a very affordable videographer. We would batch everything, and it was, maybe $100, $150 to do a video of just the two of us talking. And then as time went on, we found this awesome videographer that would get in the car with us and go around the community, and we started creating much more high quality videos. We still created the old ones that were less expensive, but we were also creating another video that was $1,500 a pop. They both have value. And so I guess what I'm saying in a circuitous way is, like, if you have nothing, that's not an excuse. You can still, it just sucks. So get motivated and start hiring out and delegating more and more stuff, because higher quality video attracts higher quality clients, makes you look like a higher quality person. So you want to get to that point. But in the beginning, not having money is no excuse. It just means you need to apply more time.
Yeah. And I think, Marguerite, and I want to hear from you as well, Alyssa, but Marguerite really, guys, got ahead of the curve on this, probably because of what she did when she didn't know what to do. She was doing it really before it was a thing. And like, I jokingly sometimes call her like the godmother of blogging, because like people would talk about her blogs before blogging was really a thing in real estate. And at that point, knowing you for as long as I have, Marguerite, that's when you were working all day, staying up all night blogging, and you were like, is my grammar even right? Like, does this make sense? And so I think a lot of what you not only the Google juice, but like, you have built it because you started. You didn't wait until you could delegate. Obviously the delegation has built in consistency. Yeah, exactly. And I think if you don't start, you're just going to be further and further behind. So Alyssa, talk a little bit about what someone like yourself does and how a real estate agent would incorporate that. I think a lot of people, not only cost scares them, but a little bit of like the delegation of it, of, is it still going to have my voice? Is it going to sound like me? Talk about like how that works and like convince people that this makes sense.
Yeah. So I would say, like, I mean, the way that Marguerite did it is really interesting. And now, like, knowing what I do, I think it's really smart because she knows how to do it all. And so she can better direct people to do what she wants them to do. Because I know a lot of people who want to hire me really, like, are still, they have, like, a very, like, high level understanding of it all. And I think that really having them do it themselves kind of puts you in a different, gives you a different perspective to it all, and you can like better direct people to do it, especially if you have a lower budget starting out and you maybe don't want to spend a lot of money, and maybe you just like, you know, hire a college student who wants some more, they're going to need some more direction from you, and they're going to cost less and they're going to be more work, but they can also kind of grow along with your business, which is like how Marguerite and I worked. So there's that way of doing it, but then there's also a different way of doing it, which would be like what I do now. A lot of times, like some people come to me and say like, hey, like I want 5 blog posts a month, like tell me what your ideas are, and then like do it. You know, like they just want to like kind of like look at it when it's done and say like, okay, yeah, this is great. And that's one way to do it. You know, you can totally outsource it to someone. And like, what I would do with that, some people say, like, well, you don't live here. How are you going to know and stuff? And like, I just start researching. Like, you know, I go on Yelp and see like, what are a lot of people going to? What's really popular? Oh, this seems like something that like people want more information on, that sort of thing.
Right.
So I do a lot of my own research and can take it from there. But then I'll have some people who come to me too and say like, oh, I know I really want this I want this blog post and these are the things I want to include in it. Do I need to like give you more information? Like, yeah, if you want, you can tell me as much as you want and I'll incorporate it. Or I can just take that and run with it and research it on my own now. So there's, and it's helpful as far as the voice goes. It's really helpful. So like Marguerite, you know, already had some of her own blog posts, and I could kind of see that, you know, her style is different from what mine is naturally. You know, she's really like casual, and I try to like incorporate that when I write for her and everything.
Awesome gets used a lot.
Yeah. So that's like
Totally awesome.
That's like a few ways to do it. And it kind of depends on, I would say, like finding the right fit. So like really like, you know, are you going to be able to kind of hold somebody's hand and walk them through, or do you need someone to come in and kind of tell you and guide you?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think a lot of the time we think of these things as delegating it and being like, okay, Alyssa, I'm going to have you write these posts and post them, and I'm never going to see them until they're on the site. And like, while I guess that could happen, that's also not how it has to happen, and probably not how it should happen.
Convert.
Yeah.
Right.
This is the thing. And the other thing that we should say, like, you know, if we're doing our duty here, we're telling you that content is like an arms race. So you can go and write the same blog post that 20 other agents in your community have already written. And it may or may not lead to business. But to me, like, it's time, it's money. If you're going to do the work, like, be on the front end of what is interesting. Look and see, like, write about something that somebody else in your community hasn't already written about. And, you know, here in Tacoma, it's become a real challenge because we have a lot of, unfortunately, the realtors aren't very good at content in my community, with the exception of Ann Jones, who continues to exceed standards of excellence. But for the most part, like, the best content is coming from non-real estate websites. And so I'm having to notice, where are the holes in what people need to know to engage in this community. And so we've ended up doing on Move to Tacoma, we've gone in a very, we're not, you know, we still talk about restaurants because people love to know about restaurants here in Tacoma. It might not be like that in your community, but also like zoning, you know, and as soon as you start to talk about zoning or anything related to housing justice, homelessness, you know, affordability, you're going to be having to have a point of view, which freaks a lot of realtors out, and most people are, but that is a zone. Being engaged in that conversation, great clicks, great engagement, great loyalty from the people who like align with your philosophy, great referrals. Like that's the thing, is like you might make some foundational posts about, you know, the 5 best veterinarians or whatever it is that you're into, but ultimately you're going to have to get into some juicy, timely stuff if you want to really convert.
Yeah, so like the markets that are a little more like flooded with realtors doing all this sort of thing, you need to like put your own spin on things. So like one example is, you know, people always want to talk about where they go to eat brunch, but like for me that's not interesting. But what would be interesting is like brunch places that don't have long lines. You know, something like that, something where you can like put your own spin on it and make it more unique. And then on the other side, kind of what we were talking about, like there are a lot of markets out there where like people aren't doing this yet. Like still into, you know, 2018, people still aren't doing it. So those realtors have like a huge opportunity to kind of like claim that digital real estate right now. And like, they should hop on it.
Yeah. Well, and what I think has really kind of accelerated your growth, if you will, is what Marguerite was doing was she was getting the content out there. She said it a few times. She was doing so somewhat inconsistently, which, as you all know, I have strong feelings about consistency as a coach. However, what Alyssa provided was not only some of that content assistance, but we all know that putting up a blog post on your blog and like never sharing it or never promoting it, like it's about as good as writing something down on a piece of paper in your office. Like that's probably the amount of people that will see it if you never drive any traffic to that. And so incorporating Alyssa not only helped with writing the content, but also promoting the content through the newsletter and through some other kind of strategic initiatives, if you will, to sound really formal about it, I guess, that you guys have put together. So I think that's a big part of it, because when we talk about content marketing and community marketing, it's not just putting pen to paper or keyboard clicks. It's okay, coming up with the content, creating the content, promoting the content, being able to respond to whatever inquiries you have, having those responses all set up. I mean, like the list goes exactly. Yeah. And so the list goes on and on. And so as much as I understand why people want to do this and launch this kind of on a budget, what I found so interesting about Marguerite and Alyssa and why I invited them on the show is I see value in what they're doing, because what they're doing is much more of an all-encompassing strategy that allows it to be consistent and allows it to renew each week, or I don't know how frequently you guys are blogging now. But it seems like you guys have a consistent schedule of content that goes out there, which is great. So talk to me a little bit about, because I feel like, you know, while you may be the godmother of blogging, as I am now going to call you, well, you may be the godmother of blogging. It has by no means been your only medium. And you have been one of those real estate agents and kind of content strategists, if you will, that I think has really kind of played in almost every medium I'm aware of, like a good amount of mediums, like through a podcast and through video and things like that. Agents that are looking to kind of expand their mediums and things like that, talk to me a little bit about how you know if it's something that you should be doing, things that you want to stay away from, if you even have an answer to that. I didn't prep you on that question.
For me, it's back to that following the curiosity. You know, when I started the podcast, I was just really interested in podcasts, you know, back in, I guess it was like 2014, 2015. Loved podcasts. I was listening to a lot of podcasts and I thought, oh, it would be so cool to have like a real estate podcast. And then I was like, who would listen to a real estate podcast? Like, I wouldn't. That sounds terrible. Like, your window when you're buying or selling is about this short. You're not going to be subscribing to a podcast for something you're going to do in a few years, especially if you end up moving to a different city and it's not relevant to the city. You know, like, it didn't make sense. But then I thought, well, what if I just talked about stuff here in the community? So when I launched Move to Tacoma, the idea was to interview different public figures. So like the mayor and like a mom blogger and like all these different people, like Commute Hacks was the first episode. like how to get around the region, which is like just famously bad traffic. And I thought I'd just do 10 and satisfy my curiosity and then maybe have a self-help podcast or something. But then it was very successful. And now we have almost 100 episodes. We have a whole podcasting network. And like, is that about real estate? No, there's actually another realtor who's on one of the podcasts in my network. Like that's how wild it's gotten, right? Like it's not, it's like this, we talk about in the course, it's like a web, right? You build things onto the next. And for me, like I'm just curious. And there are certain types of agents, maybe 15 or 20% of agents who are just going to always be very innovative and curious. If you are not one of those people, don't freak yourself out about having to always be on the cutting edge. But notice when my cue is always like if I'm jealous of what another agent is doing. If I see something they're doing and I'm like, oh, I'd like that would be really cool in my market. And I think I might even be able to do it better. You know, that's how I know I should go do something. And I think with any, I keep doing this. Like I started my Instagram account and I was like, well, this isn't going to be for real estate, and didn't use my brand login name or anything. Like I still have like a totally different Instagram name. I had a different Snapchat name. I had a different, like everything I've ever done. I think, oh, this will be free from real estate. And then it ends up being
real estate. Yeah.
Our job is to get people to like and trust us so they hit us up when they have a question. That's our whole marketing job. So whatever medium you do that in, whether it's community podcasting, blogging, making videos. I mean, I'm not making videos about anything related to real estate anymore. Like not even really neighborhood. And so like, it's just, will this make someone like me? Will they trust me? Will they think this is interesting? Will they hit me up if they have a question? That's the only criteria now. And so, I mean, man, you could be writing poetry and blogging it if that's going to attract your ideal client. Like it really doesn't matter anymore. And I know that there's a certain type of agent out there. They probably really love Ninja, which I love also. I mean, I get it. But like that very systematized implementer, like ROI oriented agent is listening to this going, this sounds like a bunch of crap. And I totally get why you think that.
No, I think that's such a good point. And I mean, I think I love that you've kind of been willing to take that chance in so many different ways. And like, I think you've done it in a really wise way. So kudos on that. But I think
it looks wise.
But I think it's one of the, it's either a lot of smoke and mirrors or you're really doing a great job. But I think it's the latter. You're doing a great job. But I think that's such a good point that you make of like, whenever you see somebody else doing something and you're like, oh, that's such a good idea. Like, it's not like a steal their strategy thing or something like that. It's just like Alyssa was saying, what's the twist that could make it your own? Mm-hmm. And so like, you know, every agent ever, for a good amount of people I know, does one on like the best place to watch the fireworks. Like, I think a really good piece of content would be like the 5 places to watch the fireworks where you don't have to buy a ticket, or like things like that like where parking's not an issue or whatever it may be, that puts your own spin on it, that people want to know. Like they want to know the things that aren't easy to find. Yeah. And so you're right, that content probably, you know, about 5 years ago was all neighborhood content. It was so hard to find information about neighborhoods. Now it's not super easy, but it's a lot easier than it was. And so now that content's kind of evolving. But I think there's ways to do it of like, if you're not super comfortable sitting down in front of the camera and doing like a video interview or something like that, like you could get on an Instagram story. Like Jesse Peters up in Canada, he's doing a great series right now. I think it's called 30 for 30 or 30 in 30. I'm blanking on the exact name. But it's a fantastic series. And I don't live anywhere near him, and I watch them because I'm like, he's got such great energy, and he's going around his community and he's doing a different place in the 30 days there are in June. And it's so smart because it has him out in the community, and he's showcasing not just like, hey, here's the local bakery. It's like, hey guys, you know, here's this bakery I came, and he's eating the cupcake, and you can see that he's there, and it's not just about like, oh, now I got to create another piece of content. And so that's the key in part of what your strategy is that I think is so fascinating is it doesn't have the air of like, oh, I had to create another piece of content, because it doesn't feel that way at the moment.
what's the other really awesome thing that's happening? If you have that podcast interview with the mayor, or you do your 30 and 30 Instagram stories, you're meeting that business owner, you're making a connection with them, you're cross-posting with them. Maybe they're sharing your stuff, right? You're building a relationship with a community member that's going to refer you business. Like you have to remember that you're like so many of these times, like you might not be able to get an hour of that person's time.
Absolutely.
Or that person. But if you're creating a video or a blog post about them, they've got all the time in the world for you, and they're grateful to you. And now you're a community booster. You have a different role than just being another realtor that, you know, if you're not too busy, I'm never too busy for the referrals from your family, whatever the heck people say.
Totally. Like Marguerite wouldn't answer my phone call, guys. And then I was like, but I'm going to put you on this show. And then all of a sudden she was, no, I'm kidding, of course. But I think there is such value in that, of like, you can start to have conversations that you potentially wouldn't have. And it establishes a level of credibility. It's like, whoa, Marguerite gets to sit with the mayor. Like, look at her fancy pants. And so I think it's a really smart strategy. So before we wrap up, if you could leave, I want both of you to answer this question. If you guys could give any advice to somebody that's looking to start this strategy and launch this strategy, what would it be? Or a takeaway, or just kind of like, you know, do it, don't do it, whatever it may be.
I would say start sooner than later. Don't like put it off because you want it to be perfect, or you're waiting for this to happen or that or whatever. Like, just start, and you can refine your strategy as you go. But the longer that you wait, other people are going to start doing it and be taking your digital footprint. And yeah, I would say get started sooner than later.
Awesome.
I would say you deserve to work with clients who like you and trust you, who believe you when you give them advice, especially in the market that most of us are in right now. Like, that saves time and money for everyone, and you deserve that. And in order to get that, you have to know what you're all about. And it does not matter if you're Snapchatting or Instagram storying or blogging or videoing. Full disclosure, I deleted Snapchat. I don't even know if anybody's still on.
I don't know.
To get LinkedIn. But whatever your thing is, if all you do is post to your personal Facebook, it doesn't matter. Like, don't let anybody act like one medium is better than another. Your job is getting your people to reach out to you, and you deserve to have your people. Everything Absolutely. Else is just.
Yeah, it's the same logic as a CRM. Like, the best one is the one you log into and do. Like, the best medium for you is the one that you're going to consistently post to or share to or whatever it may be. So I think that's fantastic. So I know that your course is closed and nobody can register for it. So it's obviously like anticlimactic, but I'm going to include a link anyway, because I think it's fantastic. And because all of our members, as I mentioned to you guys before the call, are these self-motivated people that are investing in themselves each and every day and want to do better in their business. So when does registration open for the next one, if you guys know? And if not, you know, how can somebody find you guys to get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can always go to communitymarketingcourse.com and you can use the contact form. We're on the Facebook. She's at homescribecreative.com. I'm at movetotacoma.com. You can always hit us up. We're talking about relaunching it in the fall. Yeah. But we're also like both in like a deep self-care stage this summer, and like freaking like really trying to like level up. And so I don't know what's going to happen in the fall. Like, we might have a very different looking course by the time it comes time for relaunch. We just don't know.
Hey, sometimes that's how it goes. But I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. Thank you guys so much for sharing with the group. It was truly, I know that they're going to get a ton out of it. So thank you guys again. I wish you guys both all the best. And guys, we'll share the link below for you guys to check out, communitymarketingcourse.com. And you can find both Marguerite and Alyssa there. I'll share all of their links. Again, thank you guys so much. It is such a pleasure talking to you two all the time.
You too.